And we roll in. Hello everyone, I'm your host the Tater, and this is Talking Shit in My Car. Keeping it short because I don't have far to go, and today I want to talk about violence. Or at least I want to talk about the word violence, the concept of violence, and what it actually means. Now, without resorting to Wikipedia definitions, I'm just going to say, off the top of my head, violence would be defined by most humans who speak English as a physical act that is intended or has the effect of causing harm, physical harm, to another being or object. Okay? Something to that effect, and that's a pretty wide, broad definition, right? Broad stroke kind of definition. That being said, I have been reading an awful lot about the term violence being misapplied. Now, let us be clear. There is a slight difference between violence and the threat of violence. They are intrinsically connected. One implies the other. And so, you really can't have one without the other, at least in abstract. But that being said, in abstract, communicating with someone else is itself not a violent act. It may reference violence. It may threaten violence. It may negotiate with violence as one of the motivations. It may seek to coerce using threats of violence. But the communication itself is not inherently violent. Now, let's take this, weird abstractions. Let's say that I had some sort of device that could send out a signal to your cell phone and cause your cell phone to explode in your hands. That would most decidedly be an act of violence, even though all I'm doing is pressing a button and sending some sort of communication. I know, and the effect is intended, and even if it's not intended, the effect is that the phone explodes on the other end. Therefore, that is an act of violence. Okay? One is a trigger for the other. However, it is not itself, right? The signal, the sending of the signal, the signal itself is not violence. It is the result of the overall combination of action, right? I specifically take this example to try to get into this weird gray area to find wiggle room. And yes, me pressing the button is intending to commit, harm, or has the effect of blowing up the phone. Maybe I don't know that this button really does this. Maybe I had no idea. Maybe I just, hit it on my phone accidentally. Triggered the signal that was built in there somehow. And there's some cheat code that makes a cell phone explode. And this is completely fictional, by the way. Obviously. But in case, for some reason, someone thinks that that's a thing. No, it's not. But where I'm going with this is this notion of cyber violence, where, for example, that's one of the misapplications of the term violence that I'm referring to. And cyber violence, as defined by either online harassment or, which is the most extreme of the cases, but the definitions we've also heard or things which were disagreement or even just, admonishment or insult. And this, in all of these cases, these are not violent acts. There may be intrinsic threats of violence, particularly with regard to harassment. Part of what would potentially define it as harassment. I think the core thing being that if someone says, fine, leave me alone, and you persist, repeatedly, aggressively confronting someone, that would be commonly construed as harassment. That being said, it still carries the threat of violence, not actual violence. Now, mind you, there are ways that you can mess with someone. I mean, I suppose if a telephone system or something was powerful enough to actually make a sound that could hurt someone, like you blow an air horn into a telephone. If it came out of the telephone just as loud on the other end, I think that might be a problem, but I don't think that that's actually technically possible. So I'm fairly sure that's not the case. It never really has been. But again, point being, it's not an act of violence. Now, what if I was threatening you in another language, and you did not, in fact, understand it? Would that still be harassment? I mean, would it still be cyber violence? I mean, someone could be reading me the weather report aggressively, or they could be threatening the lives of my loved ones in the same tone of voice, or even a sweet tone of voice. It's how does one, there's just sounds coming out of your face, So if they're not assigned to direct meaning, then where is the violence? Getting punched in the face is not something that can be interpreted in Swedish or Japanese, Hungarian or English. It's getting punched in the face. Threatening punching in the face is something that comes in the language. I suppose I could shake my fist at you if I was in optical range. Right, but otherwise it would require some sort of language to convey this, no? So it's an act of communication, albeit, unpleasant communication, albeit aggressive communication, albeit threatening communication. It is still communication. And in many ways, people are trying to expand the definition and usage of the term violence. And that's just one example that I'm picking on right now. There are others. I think I shall have to do a follow-up on this to get into it. Anyway, thank you for listening, and bye for now.